Good afternoon. I'm Chad Lefteris, CEO of UCI Health, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. On behalf of the What Matters to Me and Why Organizing Committee, the Advisory Council on Campus Climate, Culture, and Inclusion, the UCI School of Medicine, and UCI Health, it is our great pleasure to welcome you to another What Matters to Me and Why talk. As staff, faculty, residents, physicians, fellows, and students, we spend much of our time here with exams and lectures, clinical practice, and so many other things that we're all doing that are required to keep the university and UCI Health running smoothly. What matters to me and why is a chance to stop and break from our usual frenetic activities. With these talks, we have the opportunity to hear from people who shape UCI through their daily activities. Speakers give a short, informal talk, followed by ample time for questions and discussion, and there is usually no prescribed topic. Speakers are asked simply to answer the question, what matters to you and why? And do so authentically and frankly, and take that wherever it may go. The series provides a forum for speakers to talk about values, beliefs, motivations, and perhaps to share how they have been shaped by their own personal experiences, including both the highs and the lows encountered along the way. The hope is to strengthen bonds between faculty, students, and staff who discover, teach, and heal here, and celebrate the diversity of this community and the commonalities that bind us together. Because this series attracts an audience from all over UCI, it is our tradition to give you a minute to introduce yourselves to your neighbors. But now that we're in the Zoom area, we'll use the magic of breakout rooms to split you into smaller groups where you can take 60 seconds to say hello before coming back to this main Zoom room for the main event. So we'll go ahead and, with the magic of technology, break us away.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoy getting to know your virtual neighbors. I am Michael Stamus, Dean of the School of Medicine here at UCI. Following a successful campus program that actually has been around for almost a decade, we kicked off the What Matters to Me and Why at UCI Health series in 2019. All of our talks are recorded, including this one. You can find previous videos on the What Matters to Me and Why website if you missed the earlier ones, or if you can't stay the entire time today. In addition, you'll receive a survey after the event, and we take feedback, particularly suggestions for future speakers, very seriously. So please fill that out completely and submit it so we can have your feedback on this and future events. It's really important that we hear from a diverse perspective of people and voices for this series. And this opportunity is open to anyone at any level or area. It's now our great pleasure to introduce Dr. Charles, or Chuck Vega, as we know him. Chuck, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Michael?
Good. Dr. Vega grew up in Northern California and completed his undergraduate degree at Harvard University. He then attended medical school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then had the wisdom to come back to the West Coast and completed his residency training in family medicine here at UCI. He was convinced to stay on as faculty in the Department of Family Medicine and now holds the title of Health Sciences Clinical Professor. So he's risen all the way through the ranks and really at a lofty position in his career. He's the director, of course, of UCI's Program in Medical Education for the Latino Community, so-called Prime LC, which we're very, very proud of. And he won a Macy Faculty Scholarship to improve patient-centered health education at UCI. He also currently serves as Assistant Dean of Cultural and Community Education at the School of Medicine. Dr. Vega has seen patients and taught medical students and residents at UCI's Family Health Center in Santa Ana for the past 20 years. This clinic, of course, is a federally qualified health center and the largest safety net clinic for Orange County. And it's just such an important part of our healthcare offerings. Dr. Vega's academic interests are focused on access to quality, compassionate medical care for underserved populations, and the development of training programs to promote this vision of healthcare and to promote and educate the future leaders who will have the same vision and ideals as he does and as we do. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Chuck Vega to the virtual podium to share with us what matters to him and why.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael and Chad, for the great introduction. Thanks as well to Rachel and Will for all your hard work. Xavier, thank you for pitching in. What matters to me and why? Yeah, it's just that simple. But this is, I know what this is. This is a biggie. And it reminds me of one of my favorite anecdotes from a colleague, a great friend of mine. She had to make a major presentation, and it was a big audience that she hadn't had the chance to speak to before. She had mentors out there, folks she admired in the audience, and her mentor caught her right before she went out and said, "Listen, Meg, it's going to be great, or it's going to be over." And I thought, wow, that is pithy wisdom right there, because yes, no matter what happens in the next 30 minutes or so, the sun shall come up tomorrow, and everything will be okay. I am certain that this will be over, but it is a real honor, and I have had some chance to think about really what matters to me and why. I'm not the most mindful of individuals, so this has been a good exercise for me, if nothing else, to get out there and really think about why I do what I do. But it came with some trepidation about doing a presentation like this. I definitely know the imposter syndrome that, gee, I don't deserve to be here. And I feel awkward. I don't feel, self-confident. I have doubts. And that's a pretty familiar feeling to me. But it came along as well as I've been, through growing up and experience I've had over time, and certainly even as an adult, with another theme, and that's the theme of faking it until you make it. Now, what do I believe in? I believe in faking it until you make it. And as a matter of fact, I'm doing it right now. So that's something I believe in, because why? Because without that, I wouldn't even be here talking to you today, and that's a definite fact. And so you work with it, you try new things, you fail. You learn from that, you advance, and that's where I am today. Let's go with our first slide, because I'm going to use a little bit of a biographical description to kind of get some themes out there. Oh God, and I did not expect I'm getting more nostalgic and emotional as I get older. So this is like my first time my throat kind of closes up with this. So I'll be lucky to make this without crying. My parents are my heroes. As a parent, I really hope that every child looks up to their parents and holds them as models of virtue and somebody they want to be, and they not just love, but they respect. And I know that's not true for a lot of families, and that to a degree that breaks my heart. But I also know that there's great grandparents out there, there's great uncles, aunts, big brothers, big sisters, coaches, mentors, teachers. And when I think about those kids who don't have the opportunity to have, parents as heroes, somebody that close to them, that really gives me a ton of energy to go out and help those kids. And so mentorship is something I take very seriously. And I have these wonderful examples. My father overcame severe challenges in his childhood and adolescence, but he really blazed his own path out of poverty and out of a really desperate situation. Took him all over the country, but he made it. My mother grew up in a classic small town, and at 18 years old was whisked off to Washington, D.C. To work in the Pentagon. So a huge switch. And so their values, as my parents, became my values. And one of the key Vega values is the concepts of self-invention and self-reliance. Now, I didn't face the same pressures that they faced. And certainly I don't face the same pressures and some of the same challenges growing up that others I come into contact every day. Be they patients, be they our great medical students, be they some of my colleagues. And so I'm really grateful for the fact that my parents created stability around me. But at the same time, I think I've always been on the side of those who suffer discrimination, for those who aren't given an opportunity, who don't have a voice. So I'm going to take the underdog every single time. And I think that started with the values of my parents and their own experiences growing up. All right, so let's go next slide. Now, this happy little guy doesn't know that there's a storm coming for him. I was a tense kid. I was a shy kid. I was not self-confident. And of course, those of you who know me now, realize that I've completely overcompensated for that at this point. And I'm a total douche, actually. But you can go next slide. My parents both worked. I was a single kid. I was an only child. And so I spent a lot of, time by myself. Now, that was not a help from the concept of shyness, but it was definitely a huge boon for creativity and imagination. So when I was growing up, my mind really became my best friend. And to this day, I actually have difficulty with mindfulness exercises when people say, okay, now let's just relax and turn your brains off and just detune. And I'm like, I don't want to turn my brain off. My brain is my best buddy. It's been there in good times and bad. And sometimes it really was the only thing that saw me through. So I have abandonment issues with my own consciousness. But that said, and I think we can one more slide. Yeah, so I did spend a lot of time, by myself, reading with milk. This is the childhood that I knew, but I couldn't focus too much on academics, and I certainly wasn't focused too much on my own mental well-being because really it was time to get to work. Go ahead and put that next slide. So I've been hustling, I feel, since I can't remember if it's exactly 8 or 9 years old, but I started going house to house and asking for odd jobs, landscaping jobs, any kind of jobs that I could do around the neighborhood in order to get paid. This is what I did in the afternoons, and this is how I spent my summers. And I developed a nice little empire, actually, through this kind of work. Now, I give my parents a ton of credit for this because they got it exactly right. This is what you do when you have a shy kid, a quiet kid, is you make them go out and hustle. So if I wanted something, I had to earn it. And I think that I learned a larger lesson in this. So, I'm an 8-year-old who wants the latest Star Wars toy, but now I see an 80-year-old in clinic with depression and type 2 diabetes and a host of other illnesses. It comes down to some basic motivations. What is it that you want? And how can, what's your path to get there? As a physician, it's how can I help you get there? That's what's important. And starting with each individual person and taking into account their values and their goals and what's important to them is a critical part of healthcare. And so I learned this for myself at a very early age. It also, broke me out of my shell to a large degree. But in another way, it was really, I think, one of the first steps in beginning a path to medicine. And I think that I had a million jobs growing up, and I thought that, every one of them I took something from, except food service. I should have put the McDonald's picture in here, but it's actually, it gets me a little PTSD because there's really nothing good about food service. The only thing I learned was never work in food service again. But for us in healthcare, we don't stop working hard. I think that everybody comes in and says, well, one of my advantages and strengths is that I work really hard. I'm incredibly diligent. Well, get in line, because everybody in healthcare works incredibly hard. We push ourselves to emotional and physical limits. Why? Because we care and we want to take the best care of our patients, certainly. But I also think that's born of the fact that we have this incredibly privileged position where people let us into their lives and they do share their values and they do share their goals. And, just to be part of that and to be in touch with the human condition through that connection to individual patients and to a larger extent to whole communities is incredibly special. That said, we all have to learn our limits. And I think that even back then, thinking about how I was balancing, the work I was doing after school, extracurriculars like soccer that I might be doing, and later on doing service activities, you start to formulate a bit of a sense of balance of who you are and what you can do. And I think that's great. And we all need to mind that, because, if we're not good to ourselves, if we're not good to the people we love, we're not going to be good to certainly to our patients and other folks we come into contact every day. So at this point of our brief story, I'm working hard. I'm starting to get some, academic success, and I'm kind of coming into my own skin a little bit. And now it's time for something completely different. The next slide, please. So this is day one, Harvard University. You can tell it's a different era. If you haven't, you've probably figured out from the pictures that this is, I'm not a Gen Z, but this is late 80s. The sweater gives it away. I was so proud of that sweater. I was not taking out that sweater. I was very proud of it. And I didn't know about humidity. But it was when we moved in Cambridge that day, it was like 84, but like 90% humidity. So I was just, like moving in like suitcases and boxes. So I was just pasted with sweat, and that's essentially, I'm not sure it got a lot better from there at Harvard. But it definitely made a first impression. I knew that I wanted to get out of my semi-rural town I grew up in Northern California. I just didn't think that it would take me this far. And I think the change was quite apparent. My very first service club meeting. So I was a freshman. I'd done service activities through high school. I wanted to do something to give back. There was a whole service club that was an umbrella organization. What a great concept. So you can do mentorship, and you can do some kind of advocacy, and you get engaged with communities this way. But my first meeting, what scarred me for life was the fact that there was a shouting match between the president and the vice president of the service club, and they were screaming at each other about where they wanted to expand their next project into a school or into a skilled nursing facility, and it just erupted and got really personal really quickly, and it was so different for me because I think all success socially, but also even academically, when I was growing up through my adolescence, it was always about like never appearing that you were giving any effort whatsoever. That was like the worst thing that you could do, is look like you try and look like you actually care. But these Harvard kids, man, they tried 24/7, and they very much let you know about it. It wasn't, sometimes just enough to know that they were right. They had to show very clearly that you were wrong. And so that was a big culture change for me. And I really had to evolve or fail. And I had friends who really couldn't make that transition, even with help. They couldn't make that transition from, the place they knew where they grew up to this very strange island outside of Boston. And so I tried to take a different tack, and maybe it was just a survival instinct, but I really embraced this concept of changing and evolving. And so I was code switching all the time with my friends, because I did develop really good friends there, and I'm really happy about the experience I had at Harvard. To going to the classrooms, which became my signature service activity, was doing mentorship with kids in the local junior high schools around Cambridge. Most of them were, backgrounds were, parents, or they immigrated directly from Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, some Mexican Americans as well. And so that was really special to me. But it was a very different type of communication. I felt like I had to, put on a different personality going there. So small group sections, which was where a lot of your grades are made at Harvard, and you have to learn the tricks of the trade to make things move forward. So it was confusing. It was a lot to handle, but it taught me a lot, I think, about my identity. And identity is very important. And I have tremendous respect for those who claim their identity. I respect, where you're coming from as to what your identity is. I am particularly always feel, so humbled by folks who claim their identity in difficult circumstances. Maybe that identity was denied to them. And maybe even that identity was denied to their parents and their parents' parents. And so again, I have tremendous respect for folks who find that identity. But at the same time, I also find that identity is a pretty selfish concept overall. So it's about how I view me. I view me. So it's a very short sentence, a short sentence that includes the words both I and me. And so, what matters to me, to go back to the central question of our discussion today, is, my values. My values matter to me. How I apply them and the work that I do to actually create good, that matters a lot to me. My identity, it's really functional. It's functional. I think I'm a 5'9", 165-pound, rapidly decaying vessel for my values and my experiences and my mission. And my mission is to do as much good as I possibly can while I've got this platform, while I've to take advantage of things I've achieved and stand on great shoulders like those of my parents to do good in the world. That's actually what matters to me. And I do feel terrible for folks who latch on to an identity and then can't necessarily grow or evolve. And the example that comes to mind is politicians, where they may have made a decision 25 years ago that they can't go back and say, you know what, I did not understand. The facts aren't the same now as they were then, and therefore we should make a change. Or maybe even admitting to the fact that my values, my personal beliefs have changed on this matter. These very important subjects, but no, instead they feel they have to grind in their heels or dig in their heels and be obstinate about this kind of change, and that is, I think, a really difficult path for a lot of folks. By not evolving, by not changing, as our culture is constantly evolving and changing. One, it's difficult. Two, I think it's you're missing out on so much, and you can't necessarily grow into the person maybe who could be the most effectual overall. I want to stress just how terrifically blessed I have been. My parents did a tremendous job of sheltering me from some difficult things, and I had challenges, physically. I had challenges emotionally, but they weren't that severe. I know folks who have overcome much greater challenges. But really what I'm most thankful for is the fact that as I went through this journey, I had people who I met from very different backgrounds. And I really tried to gain something from each of those relationships over time. And I have tremendous respect for all those people who have taught me. And honestly, the people who have taught me the most, since I became a physician, are my patients. And so that mutual sense of respect is really important, for achieving good health outcomes, certainly, but I think it also makes me better as a person. And I hope it does for them too. I hope they get the same out of it. So I want to conclude today's session with sharing some of my experiences, because there was never a plan. It's just this amazing balance between some things which were terrible and difficult, and some incredible moments that just gave me hope and the energy to persevere and succeed. And that's what life is just this balance of different moments, and taking your values and then having these experiences, growing from them and learning. And so I hope you oblige me in this short exercise. And I hope that it also helps you maybe to think about how, your own path, and go revisit some of your own experiences. And I thought that since this is a pretty dry talk with just somebody talking on a screen, I would try to inject just a little bit of something extra here. So we're going to play some music in the background that might be evocative. Now, for me personally, something from the Dead Kennedys or Fishbone would be really appropriate. But this being a UC Irvine talk, I wanted to keep everything in the public domain. Therefore, we're going to give this a try. And if it doesn't work, Will, please let me know. But yeah, if you could cue the music. And so it's Debussy, and I just like this song because It has a romance in it, but it also has nostalgia. There's joy and pain, and I think it flows well with some of the themes I'll discuss. So here we go. My first memory, like a lot of folks, my first memory is actually quite painful, literally. So I was around 4 years of age. We lived in Massachusetts for a short time, and I was sledding. Californians don't know how to sled. So I just took off down this steep hill and went right into this bush, huge thorny bush, blackberry. I don't know what it was, but it hurt. And so I'm freaked out. I'm in the middle of it. I can't escape. It's tearing at me. I'm bleeding. I noticed that my friends do what it's so great with kids. They just go on instinct. And so what's the instinct in that situation? Just run away as fast as you can from the site. Because I was bawling and screaming. I think my mom came and got me from down the street because like it was so loud, and that's my first memory. Lots of pain. But when I contrast that with we moved back to California shortly thereafter, and growing up in the Bay Area and outside Sacramento, basketball was a huge I think mental balm for me. I could shoot and just relax. And I just remember being in Mountain View with the fog starts rolling in the evening, and just shooting and just feeling the ball, make it go through hoop. Simple. There was a lot of joy there. There was a lot of peace there for me. Fast forwarded to the teenage years, I did a lot of service activities. So I was active in skilled nursing facilities. I worked for the environment. I did some work in terms of tutoring and mentoring younger students. I was busy, but I knew that there was more. I really wanted to make a connection with individuals to help. And that's where the spark of medicine was really lit, where I really wanted to, decided that was the path for me moving forward. And I wanted, long-term relationships with people, and I wanted to work in a community where I could be, a tool to improve health, no matter what it was. You need me to, do more inpatient work. Fine. You want me to deliver babies? Sure. See more kids? Fine. Do geriatrics? Yes. What does the community need? And that's what I'll try to do for you. And that's family medicine. So like a lot of folks, I did not choose my specialty. My specialty chose me. I with personal relationships, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but I will say that because I won't talk about the painful parts, because there are, of course, we all have those. But I want to focus on I was thinking about the first time that I was in love. Now that if you can capture the serum from somebody who's experiencing love for the first time, sure, for another person, and you could purify that. Now that would be a panacea. That could cure diabetes, heart failure, and alopecia all at once. Like it's such an amazing feeling, and I just hope if everybody gets to experience that, and I hope that they continue to have that for a lifetime, because it is so sustaining. Moving ahead a little bit from there, I did marry somebody I was very much in love with, and remain so to this day, my soulmate, Stephanie. And but even our wedding was one of those stories with real tragedy and these incredibly uplifting moments. We got married in Colorado, which is where Stephanie's from. And my grandfather went into cardiac arrest at the rehearsal dinner. So I got to resuscitate him. And it was, terrible and tragic. I will say that, I did notice that, at that point we were all 3 years out from medical school. I had a lot of my colleagues who I went to medical school with there, and watching their skill and watching them jump into action was really amazing, because we stabilized him and got him to the hospital. But very sadly, he passed away a few days later. So it was, everybody's just an emotional wreck. I'm included in that. And we go to the ceremony the next day, decide to press on because that's what we do. And that's what he would have certainly wanted. And so when in the church, there was a door in the back, and we were traditional. I hadn't seen Stephanie all day. And she approached, as I'm standing up at the altar, she approached the door, and you could just see the figure, and I could see the veil. And, it's blurred because it was a frosted window, but man, how often do you just get to like actually feel your soul and actually just touch it? And it's like, oh, this is where it is. And this is exactly where I should be for all the stuff that's happened, especially in the past 24 hours that day. This is where I belong. And it's just, it was uplifting, and it saw me through a very difficult time, that one image. And when I faced up times now, I think about these moments, and that's what helps me to overcome the challenges that I face. So I'll just, a couple other quick ones, and then when we're done, we'll break for questions. I was incredibly fortunate as a student, even into my internship, that I had never had a patient die under my care. And I was one of the only people I knew who had that happen, a patient who I got to know well. And, they all made it, even if they had severe illness. I did multiple ICU rotations. I started to think, gosh, what's going on? Maybe I have some kind of special power. But of course, that's part of what we do in healthcare is we, help people pass on. And that happened when I was in the middle of my intern year. And this gentleman I knew him very well because he'd been in the CCU for a couple weeks. I knew his family. And I knew he was a good person, very respectful. It wasn't until I went to his memorial service that I found out he was an absolute, hero from World War II, straight up, incredible story. He had this incredible extended family that included the people he worked with and even some of the people they served with. And that's when it really taught me a lot about it's about having a good death, because he did. His family was there. He was at peace. He had lived a very full life. It was about living a good life. And that taught me a lot about how to, make that happen. And, and the big picture about really trying to leave one's mark. And that happened here at UCI. UCI somehow, when I was 25 years ago, when I was applying for residency, took a look at all this and said, yep, you're in. And thank goodness for that. That has made me eternally grateful. The experience I've had in the family medicine residency program, in Prime LC, in School of Medicine, and especially at the Family Health Center at Santa Ana, I would not give them back for the world. And they've allowed me the opportunity to further grow and to explore new things right up to this very moment, to really learn what matters to me and why. What a blessing. So all of these experiences, high and low, all important along the way, and they shape me into who I am now. With that said, this is now over. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
So listen, I really want to tell you what an incredible, heartfelt story, Dr. Vega. Thank you for sharing some of those special moments in your life, and I can understand how living them over again was probably bittersweet, in preparation for this talk. So.
But again, it's kind of, you understand the balance now. And there's different capacities, and I find that your sense of what I've learned very much respect in individuals is their resiliency to trauma in particular is quite variable. I've been blessed to have pretty high tolerance, but I also recognize that I've got my limits, and we all do, and that very much it's something that's that I respect very much.
Well said. Well said. Well, we're just so grateful for your contributions to our healthcare enterprise, our School of Medicine, and especially your work in quality and compassionate medical care for the underserved population. It really is what we are about, right? So I did have a question, though. Have you kept up your basketball skills?
Yeah, so one of the fabulous things about having kids is that I get to play sports again, and now that they're getting a little bit older, and so no, the answer, it's not quite the same.
Well, you have about 11 months
as when
to
I was 7 or 8, but I still can shoot. I could shoot. I didn't have handle or court vision, and as a smaller guy, that's death. That's going to get you cut from the junior high team every time. But I do enjoy playing still.
The reason I asked is, we do at grad day every year, we have a competition, sports competition between the faculty and the grad students. And we won 2 years in a row. The trophies are still up in my office in Irvine Hall. And then we lost the last 2 years in a row. Coincidentally, I didn't participate the last 2 years in a row, but nevertheless. But next year the faculty get to choose the sport. So I'm just kind of, gauging where our talents are, because obviously they have youth on us for sure, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would think more like board games. Things they don't understand also because they're younger.
There you go. All right.
So that might also flummox them.
Perfect. All right. Listen, I want to open it up to the audience for questions from the audience. You can ask a question via the chat button. If you want to be anonymous, just say in there anonymous, or you can raise your virtual hand on Zoom, and we'll try to keep an eye on those and call on you and unmute you.
I've got a question from Michelle. She wants to know details about how Prime LC started and how you started with the program.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's actually a really good story. There's a lot of folks who contributed to Prime LC and getting it started, but it was really the brainchild of Al Moneta, who was a senior associate dean at the time for education. And he just had this vision of a specific program designed to help improve health equity, but also leadership beyond being good clinicians for Latino communities. And it was very touch and go. While now it seems kind of like, gosh, Prime LC has been there forever. It was not. So he's planning started in 2001, and I was just a groupie. Because I was trying to do something very similar with our residency program. At that point, I was an associate residency director and was really trying to incorporate some of those best elements of how do we teach how to take care of the population we have in Central Santa Ana. 80% of my patients prefer to speak Spanish. And so, formalizing that and creating a pedagogy around that. So we were essentially trying to do something similar. Myself at the residency level, he for this great cohort of medical students, and that's how we got in touch. And I just remember it was very touch and go. Like literally every 2 weeks, I was like, "It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off." And that's where allies in the state legislature, at UniHealth Foundation, at California Endowment, they're the ones who really put us through. And once we had the students on campus, then it became clear, like, oh yes, we have scored. It wasn't the right curriculum necessarily at first, but it was definitely the right idea, and we got the right people in place, and everything's fallen into place since then. 134 graduates now from Prime LC.
And it really is the model across the UC system, by the way, because when they went back to the legislature this year to get more money for Prime programs, which they were successful doing, and we will be developing our Prime ABC program, which is really just a continuation of our current Lead ABC program, but with funding from the legislature. So that's fantastic. When they did that, they had an analysis done, and the analysis pointed out the success of Prime LC. It was one of the singular successes of the Prime program with data to back it up. So the data in terms of what those graduates have done after they've left the program. And to a significant majority, they have continued to serve the underserved population. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Chuck, but thank you for that. There is another question here, which is from Shauna Stark. She wants to know, did you have a mentor that made an impact on you? Maybe it was Al Moneta, maybe it's someone else, or maybe more than one. And if so, how did that influence your mentorship style?
I was really, I'm not the best at gaining mentorship. I will be honest. And it really, but I saw the negative effects of that, because I was just, again, self-reliant. I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to, make my own way academically. And at some point that will fail you. So absolutely, I had to learn the hard way about mentorship. And then once I did, I realized there's value in there just beyond trying to help me move forward. It gives me different perspectives. I can learn a lot more, and then I can pass that along. And yes, I did have, great mentors. Dr. Mineta, Dr. Prislin, folks like UCI have been invaluable to me. I see Cindy Hawk right there, and she's definitely stands among them as well. And there's probably other people I can't see because I'm, it's the limited view. But I do believe in having multiple mentors as well, because one person doesn't have all the answers. The only person who has the answers at the end of the day is you. But what I really try to do with mentorship is triangulate, and I encourage my own mentees, get 2 other opinions, form a little triangle, and then get different opinions, and then at the end of the day, they're going to kind of push you in a certain direction, and you make that choice as to how you're going to modify that and where you're going to go.
Sage advice. And speaking of Dr. Cindy Hawk, who is one of your mentors, but also your chair, she has a question for you.
Hello, Chuck. Can I speak up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Oh, terrific. Well, one of the things I appreciate so much, Dr. Vega's, his work and his presence throughout the school and department and UCI. One of the things that's so striking is that you maintain this sense of optimism and equanimity and hopefulness despite facing so many challenges. I wonder, how do you maintain that?
That's a great question, Cindy. And I know maybe I practice a little bit more mindfulness than I do, but I take like 2-second meditations when I'm feeling a little bit frustrated and overwhelmed. That helps. Just a 1 breath and go. That when I'm in clinic, particularly, like things are moving very fast. And I like it that way. To get as much care as we can to people and have them get a great experience out of it as well. But yeah, taking those moments, and man, the last 2 years now, just about, we've really needed that. So if you haven't found that moments to find equanimity and your path forward, whether it's exercising or baking bread or whatever it is, or just taking 2 seconds when you're about to go in a room to just keep your hand on the door and breathe and level set. That's been really important now more than ever. So I think we've all learned a ton more, in a really difficult situation. It hasn't been easy, but I hope that we come out of this a lot stronger as we emerge from the pandemic.
Let's hope so. We have time for one more question, and we have a good one here from Emily Rodriguez, who says, how was your work life or life-work balance? I like that, life-work balance better. When you started being a family medicine doctor after residency, and how has it changed over time? Has it improved? Has it gotten worse?
Yeah, there's no doubt it's worse. So I just want to see who's on now, because I think this is particularly helpful for anybody who's in training right now or early in your careers. It doesn't necessarily get better, but you do have more control of it. And having those perspectives allows you to make choices. And I'm a huge believer, as you're early in your career, say yes to as much as you possibly can, because you don't know where it's going to take you. So many things that I've started became successful through serendipity. And I never, again, there was not a distinct plan, but once I realized, oh, this is what I've got, and I developed a little bit, man, I'm really glad I had it. And I like being busy, and that's what I've chosen. But find what works for you and just be willing to adapt and change. Check in with yourself every now and then and see, because the work you're doing right now, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a student or faculty or staff or whatever, that tells you a little bit about your barometer for how much you can take on. And just be ready as life changes and your work changes, but really your life is the one, I think, that's the driver usually. Just be ready to actually accept that and react to it and get support for that, because that's going to prevent you from being burnt out and less useful and less happy.
Well done, Dr. Vega. I learned so much each time we do one of these. I'm going to talk to you more about this empire you created when you were 9 years old and doing all this.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm going to talk to you more about that offline, but because I resemble that remark a little bit myself. So I bet we have some neat stories there. But most importantly, thank you for being so thoughtful, as Dr. Stamos said, and really just insightful in such a heartfelt way, and being our speaker and our guest today. Again, I'd also want to thank the What Matters to Me and Why Organizing Committee, the Advisory Council on Campus Climate, Culture, and Inclusion for their support in bringing this program to us. Please look for your email announcements about upcoming winter speakers in January. We're already talking about next year, right? January 2022. Dr. Leslie Thompson, the Donald Brennan Chancellor's Professor in Departments of Psychiatry and Human Behavior and Neurobiology and Behavior, will be our guest. And please remember to take the survey. Rachel just put it in the chat feature, so you can click on it quickly and go do that. Your feedback is extremely important to us as we look for future speakers and shape this program. And we can only do that with your direct and honest feedback. So thank you very, very much to all of you for being here. I think my last count was over 50 people. Dr. Vega, thank you so much again. Excellent job. And one comment said sage advice, and I think that was perfectly stated. So have a wonderful afternoon. Well done.
Thank you.
Also to Rachel. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, team.
Thanks, Dr. Vega.